yell at me later, but welcome back to the National Ag of the Classroom Virtual National Conference. Just a month ago, we were enjoying ourselves up in Minnesota, and our next guest today in our elementary session is Josh Munoz. He's from Minnesota as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh as he's going to talk about the Pollinator Toolkit, science-based pollinator education. He's going to introduce himself, but I want to remind you again that our conference is sponsored generously by BASF and the CHS Foundation. Thank you for their support. And thank you, Josh, for joining us. We look forward to it. You guys can't ask questions in the chat, but if you post them in the Q&A, I will respond and keep up with other things in the chat as well. So we're going to turn it over to Josh. Josh, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here. It's going to be a little different from the in-person conference. Just a few things. Elise and Elaine, I'll kind of talk about them a little bit here, but they're not going to be joining us today, so it's just going to be me. And missed out on free toolkits giveaways at the in-person conference, so we won't be doing that today. But there will be an opportunity at the end to, if you're interested in getting this toolkit for yourself and for your classroom. I'll share a QR code at the end where you can take a look at the resources and purchase them if you like. All right. So let me start out with just sharing the slides I will be using. Same slides that I used at the in-person conference, but it's going to be a little extended. We couldn't do all the slides during the in-person because they had like a 30-minute time of actually being hands-on with the materials in the toolkit. So this is kind of more of an extended version of the slides. Let's see. There you go. Okay. Alrighty, so yeah, Elise and Elaine, they're at the University of Minnesota B Lab. Elaine Evans in the middle is pretty much the main creator of this toolkit. She, when I met her, she's still known as like the bumblebee queen. She's the one who does all her work and PhD on bumblebees, and still does that type of work and does a lot of outreach, and is continuing creating content for this toolkit. So this toolkit is I think it's at its version 2. So it's continuously being upgraded with more resources, and I give all the credit to her of how this came to be. And for myself, I graduated from the University of Minnesota with a agriculture education master's degree, and got my license to teach 5th grade through 12th grade, and I've been at Como Park High School for the last 6 years. How I connected with the U of M before I became a teacher, I still work at the B Lab. So I do a lot of outreach with them, and when I connected with Elaine and this toolkit, I became one of the first teachers to start implementing it in the classrooms to kind of figure out try to bring feedback and try to bring those next versions of the toolkit. So here we go. So a little bit of background. I always get the question asked, like, how did I become an agriculture teacher? And the true answer is that I wasn't really planning to. So at the U of M for my bachelor's, I was planning on working for General Mills or any of these big ag companies here in Minnesota. So my degree was in agriculture communications and marketing. And then as I went through that process, my advisor saw in me that I could potentially be a teacher, and she asked me if I was interested in the opportunity. And there was a lot of scholarships involved in agriculture education, so I took on that opportunity. And fast forward later, I'm already, like I said, 6 years at the high school level. And I really love it. Agriculture education, it's now becoming that career technical education type of classroom. I teach the wood shop and the engines, and of course, intro to agriculture, horticulture, food production class. It's kind of difficult right now to find those FACS teachers, those culinary teachers right now, so that ag teacher can bring in that food science and food science classes. So many preps, but what I love about ag, they all kind of connect and all my classes kind of transition very well with one another. And I'm kind of glad that I'm going after Shannon because, blueberries and cucumbers are all dependent on pollination. And this is a good transition to her webinar. Yeah, that's me right there on the right, Josh, with the bee beard. So the State Fair in the U of M has a lot of history, participating in events and outreach. So that's the bee squad there. They've been doing it for a long, long time, doing demonstrations like the bee beard. So I've done that a couple of times, maybe 3 times, and now I'm kind of letting the undergrads do those demonstrations. But there's just been a lot of interest in pollination and bees and native bees and the commercial beekeeping and a lot and how they kind of connect. And so the public has a lot of interest in this for good reason. So there's growing public concern about pollinator decline. 87% of Minnesotans concerned about pollinators. So, and I'm sure that's across the country. Demand for pollinator education is higher than it could be. So pollinator educators, social studies teachers, science teachers, and of course ag teachers, but really anyone can be teaching this type of content in their classrooms. I know I'm a high school teacher. That's what I've been working with the most, 9th through 12th. But what I love about this toolkit is that you can, as a teacher, can work towards the rigor and the rigor of the toolkit. So it can be taught with all the way to kindergartners to 12th grade, and I'm going to give you all examples about how you can increase that level of rigor depending on your audience and your students. There's a little quick picture of everything that comes into the toolkit. It looks like a lot of stuff because it is, but it's all good, relatable work, and it brings very important topics within pollinators and bees that people in the public and students maybe haven't really thought about, specifically towards the flowers. Without flowers, there's no bees. Without bees, there's no flowers, and the habitat. So, and it's all relatable. That's another thing what I really love about this this toolkit. It's relatable, and I get a lot of good feedback from students. Also, as an ag teacher, we have to focus on not just the classroom, but clubs and FFA, and these are just kind of good ways where you could connect these young elementary school kids to, what could be there, what kind of opportunities there is coming up, and you can even invite FFA from other high schools around your area to come in and like help out with these toolkits and just try to start introducing them to the opportunities. FFA, especially in the city, like I never heard of FFA until I went to college. In my high school, we didn't have FFA. But this is it's just a good, to me, it's opportunities. It's a lot of great opportunities for students. And the quicker we can get them to understand there's opportunities in agriculture, even living in the cities, the better. Okay, let's get into there's a lot of little partners here that helped out with the creation of this too. And you could follow them online as well. They all have their platforms, so it's I always follow them. They've gone through a lot of podcasts, and so I like listening to all these partners and their work in conservation and pollinators. So here's a little bit more about just the decline, and the topic of discussion, especially in my classes and really in the public, is the whole relationship between commercial beekeeping and native beekeepers. So native pollinators, right? So and how does that work together? So here's just the why, right? Well, the why of why we do this, why we should be learning this. So when it comes to bumblebees, there's a lot of different species, but their species are in decline. There's going to be resources I'll share with y'all about all the different type of bumblebees. It's very Minnesota specific, but your extension departments and universities have specific resources towards your state. So there's so many different bumblebee species. And they're also near extinction. So one neat thing about in Minnesota, we put the rusty patch bumblebee on the endangered species list, which a lot of people have different thoughts about this, but one of the first insects that got into that list. So slowly but surely, we're starting to pay attention to the insects and bugs that we don't typically see as value because it doesn't make a product that we purchase at the stores like honey from honeybees, right? So we're starting to put a focus on these pollinators that does an indirect has indirect value towards our food system. So like specifically like tomatoes and bumblebees go hand in hand. Not a lot of honeybees pollinate tomatoes. Bumblebees do. Um, when it comes to strawberries, I know we just had that lecture with strawberries. Strawberries are self-pollinated, but with pollination, with honeybee pollination, it creates a more of an abundance and forms much bigger and tastier strawberries. So there's a lot of strawberry picking here in Minnesota, and around the strawberry farms, there are commercial honeybees pollinating these strawberry plants. So for production. So these topics, it could get deep into food security and but most importantly, given that attention and focus and love towards native pollinators. So just because it doesn't make a product of that we buy doesn't mean that they're not important. Honeybees. So that's kind of like my background in agriculture. My family's not, it doesn't come from a farm or anything. So, when I went to the University of Minnesota, my focus was to get into an agriculture business. Get an agriculture degree here in Minnesota is a good odds of me getting a job. So, but in what I loved about CFANS, the agriculture college at the U of M, they have a lot of different jobs. So I ended up getting a job with the bee lab as an undergrad. And so I've been working a lot with commercial honeybees and working with a lot of beekeepers. And from there, I did a lot. I continue to do a lot of outreach with them at the same time teaching agriculture at the high school. So honeybees are not in decline, but have health problems resulting in many colony deaths. However, beekeepers can raise more bees. So I think just recently, like just in the beginning of 2025, there's a lot of articles coming out about like how the honeybees are drastically declining. I think beekeepers around the country saw the worst when it comes to bringing back like just the honeybees. So how beekeepers recuperate those losses is by splitting. So if they have a healthy colony, the next season, the next year, they'll be able to split and then they'll have two. So for the most part, a lot of commercial beekeepers would be able to split their bees and recuperate those losses. But lately, we haven't been seeing that type of recuperation of splits just because there is kind of a decline happening more and more. So that's something just to watch out for in the commercial side of honeybees. And then on the other side, on monarch butterflies. So again, pollinators, right? So it's not just about native bees and honeybees, but all the other ones in between, like monarchs and other butterflies and moths and bats and all the other pollinators that does a lot of benefits. So I love the monarch butterfly. It is our state insect here in Minnesota. But I love that. I love talking about monarchs because it gives they have a whole story within themselves. And in the agriculture education world, we also have a portion called SAE, Supervised Agriculture Experience. So every student in my classrooms has to have a certain specific project that they are interested in. And a lot of them through this want to get more deep into the story about the monarch butterflies, and that leads into their migration and how we as people can help with that migration, and what can we do to support that, because we're starting to see a decline from the chart that you see right here. There's a decline on the monarch butterfly population. And when it comes to full circle, what you're really starting to, when you want to increase that rigor in your classroom, how do we solve big problems like this? It all comes down to the reproduction, learning about the reproduction. It was not just a beautiful butterfly, it was an egg and a larva at some point, and then a caterpillar. So there's these stages that we have to learn, and all these stages have these problems that they might come across, and how can we support that and help that migration continue and stop that decline, right? So, it's just giving love to all pollinators, right? But also talking about how commercial honeybees are, they're extremely important when it comes to food security. There's no doubt about that. There's a list of vegetables and fruits that are dependent on honeybee pollination. That's why we keep them in hives. That's why there are commercial beekeepers specifically for the pollination. People think it's just about the honey. Honey is for most commercial beekeepers that I know and I work with, the honey is kind of on the side. It's kind of like that secondary way of just of making an income, but the pollination is where everything's at when it comes to commercial honeybees. Yeah, I already talked about the rusty patch bumblebee here. Once common, now facing extinction. First insect, I believe, that was listed on the endangered species list. So, there's a lot of case studies that you can work with students if you're kind of like if you want to increase that rigor. Like I've had students do case studies about the rusty patch bones, the advantages and disadvantages of doing this, and it comes down to like stopping the builds of homes and apartment buildings, because there might be a rusty patch bumblebee nest on that area. So, the regulations can stop the building of homes and houses, and and a lot of people have different opinions on this. So, and the more we put insects on these, the more it's gonna stop development, and and we're going to have to decide as a society, with more people looking for homes and housing, like what's the best solution, and there's no easy way to approach that. So again, this all this in the toolkit, you can the toolkit is almost like how I use it in the classroom is just the one of the first things I do in my intro to ag class, just to kind of build that foundation. Like that's my style of my class. Every ag teacher has a different style of how to begin, but I begin with the toolkit because it lays the foundation, because then it starts spreading into the animal agriculture and horticulture, and it's a good way to get started. And we're gonna start going through what that packet looks like and what all these stations look like. It comes with a packet. I have it here, a hard copy, but you could get this copy also online. But it's just a packet where students with a partner can go around. Depending on how your classroom is, I have a wood shop, so it's pretty spread around big tables. So I have each station on each table, and they kind of rotate and they kind of work towards this, and they take their time on it, and they become then these next slides are going to start going through each station and what's that message there that each station has, and how this can lead to other projects or other units that you might have in your classroom ready to go. Talked a little bit already about honeybees. Commercial honeybees, not in decline. They're kind of like, because of the whole splits, they're able to recuperate their losses. They have a lot of health problems. My unit on commercial honeybees in my classroom is about like almost 2 to 3 weeks long, because it goes into the reproduction, it goes into the food security and pollination, and it goes into the hives and structures and equipment, and then we all usually end off with diseases and what we're doing, what research is out there, and what's coming up, because there's a lot of health problems that is on its way to the United States, and we have to kind of learn and figure out, even with these viruses and parasites that are coming, we have the best way to help honeybees and this aspect is learning the reproduction of the enemy of these viruses, and so we could stop that reproduction from going, because it's definitely a problem. Again, this goes back to the monarchs. I know a lot of classroom does the whole monarch. They bring the little kit of monarchs in their classroom and see their reproduction and go from eggs to caterpillars to butterflies. There's a lot out there that there's some pros and cons to do that in the classroom, but in my classroom, what we do, we just, I specifically focus on like spring classes or in my summer program where we do a lot of this research looking at the milkweeds outside, and that's where we could do some data collection on trying to find eggs and caterpillars and take data. So one of the highest ways to create that rigor in your classroom is data collection. Being able to learn how to be scientists in the classroom with your kiddos. And I think you could do this at a very, very basic level, even with elementary school kids, how you collect data, it creates it develops that patience. Data collection takes a lot of patience and a lot of sitting but with a partner and timing and keeping time. So there's a lot of these skills that you can start building up, and adults are doing this data collection. But so you can you can relate this, you can adjust this to whatever grade that you teach. There's a good TED Talk online you could use in your classroom in terms of pollination. My boss at the Bee Lab, Dr. Marla Spivak, she has a great TED Talk. I use it in my class all the time. So she talks about all the different factors that are contributing to the loss of pollinators and honeybees, and it's not everything when it's all these complex issues that we have to deal with. It's not just one factor. It's many happening at the same time. Climate change, pesticides, pathogens, parasites, poor nutrition, habitat loss, the monocultures. So there's a lot of different ways where, as a classroom, like what I love to do in my classroom is create big projects and separating groups into like all these different type of factors and do presentations and try bring in all these factors to have a big picture and good idea why we have these problems and what kind of solutions we can figure out, and how we can present them, right? How we communicate them. So yeah, this is how we kind of started in the in-person conference. So we just got them to find a partner, grab an activity sheet, which kind of looks like a nice little packet with all the stations in them. So everyone, when they were walking in, grabbed the packet and they got a partner, and they started kind of going through all the stations. We separated them on tables. Um, they rotated among the stations. There was not really, even in my classroom, I don't was like, all right, rotate clockwise. I try to make it, give them a little more freedom of where they go. And I have a couple toolkits in my classroom, so I double them up. So everyone should be at a station and try to finish them. There's no, I don't, I make sure I just tell them, just try to complete it all, and if we need an extra day, we'll have an extra day, but try to complete the packet with a lot of good intention. Um, some games will take longer, and I'll talk about these two stations that take a little longer. So this is station number one. This is on the packet right when you get started. And so this kind of goes into like what is a bee, what is not a bee. It's called bees or wannabe. So if you buy the toolkit, you'll get a poster of it. And I highly suggest laminating it because you'll get a lot of hands on there. It gets crumply. It's, so laminating this and having this as a station, a couple, you might have two. I don't know. I have two, and I'll have it on the wall, and they kind of have to go look for it too. So I try to make them get up from their seats and move around as much as I can. So we won't go through all of this, obviously, but you can kind of see a few of these that are which one's a B and which one's a wannabe, right? So this is just the first one to kind of get students started of bio when it comes to biology, like what makes a bee, what makes a fly, how can you tell the differences? Because in my classes, eventually I tell them ahead of time, like eventually you need to know the differences because we're gonna go collect data during outside. You obviously we have the winters here, so I have to be very intentional of which classes, horticulture, when is gonna be in the spring or in the fall, all that good jazz. But so yeah, like the first one's a bee. That's a green metallic bee. You could tell it's a bee because it has a bunch of pollen on them. Bees are typically more hairy, has a lot of hair on it. So that's what one of the main indicators of a bee is, like just the furriness and the hairiness, right? So, um, flies, they have big eyes, two big eyes, compound eyes. That's what makes, and they're a lot smaller and they have two wings. And then you got wasps as another ones, and not a bee. They have that very like thin waist, and they're not hairy at all. So there's just like little biology review that you could work with your students. I have them draw them up. I draw them up first, kind of all together as a class on my chalkboard. I still have a chalkboard. I think I'm the only teacher in my school that still has a chalkboard. But draw them out and have students draw them out, and the differences, like a bee, a fly, and a wasp. And then they just the station sheet, just you just have to write what it is, if it's a bee or if it's not. Like I said, right? Bees are usually fuzzy, black and yellow. But there's a lot of diversity in terms of the bee population. So like the green metallic bee, they're all beautiful in their own way. They all come in different sizes and shapes. Some flies, wasps, moths look like a lot like mimic bees sometimes. So these insects mostly visit flowers for nectar and do not move as much pollen. So they're after the nectar source. And nectar and pollen. Nectar is a carbohydrate. Pollens are protein, and what they're kind of going after. I remember I had such great questions from students about like the monarch butterfly, for example. It's like, is it a pollinator, but does it move pollen? And great questions, to kind of talk about. It's like, and we go through that research and look at the like what does the science say with that? So some of these questions develop into their own little personal projects that they do in my classroom, like specifically on the biology and the research when it comes to moving pollen, right? So at the end of the day, every pollinator has their they either do a lot of mostly nectar, or they do grab pollen, but very, very little. And can we chart out all the different insects that carry the most pollen, that move pollen one from one flower to the other? And we quickly realize how the honeybee, the reason why we keep them as commercial insects, right, is because they're the most efficient in terms of moving pollen. So that's why we really have them in hives. Yeah, they're the most efficient, and that's why we keep them in cucumber fields and strawberry fields and blueberry fields and squash fields and all sorts of vegetables and fruits. Apples too here in Washington and Minnesota. All right, so this is the next one. So this is next station, and what I love about this station, the Pollinator Garden Buffet. So you get this whole little again, it's already laminated. The only one's laminated is the posters, but this is laminated when you get it. What I love about this is that it talks about the importance of the diversity of flowers. How we don't really think about that as people because we have such a through the Columbus exchange, we were able to go to the grocery store and see avocados there in the winter and see there's a lot of good trade and stuff. So we see a lot of these plants and vegetables and fruits that are in the winter time. And so but when it comes to bees and pollinators, they don't get that, you know. So what can we do to help pollinators receive food all summer long, so then they can go, you know, into the winter times with a lot of storage of food, right? So all plants, you know, have they bloom in different times. So the trick when it comes to landscaping and all these policies of trying to encourage pollinators is learning about flowers, planting spring and summer and fall blooming flowers so they can have food all summer long, and not just in one little area. So the diversity of flowers is what the message of this pollinator garden buffet really kind of like talks about. We have to learn just as much on the flowers than just the pollinators themselves, and what other ways that we can do help pollinators other than, you know, trying to have a beehive. You would be surprised how many times, you know, public people or students ask me and say, I want to help bees because I want to get a hive, I want to get honeybees, I want to help out bees. I was like, well, you can do, you know, there's a lot of management when it comes to keeping bees, and there's a lot of regulations and keeping hives in your home. So, but what can you do? You can help with flowers. You could plant flowers. You could do community action. You could talk about habitat and talk to your family and parents about, you know, how, you know, sometimes keeping these stems in your yard is good for bugs and pollinators, right? So this just talks about more than just how young kids and high schoolers or your audience can help uh, pollinators without keeping bees, right? Or what other things they can do other than maybe they don't have a green thumb, right? They don't know how to grow flowers, but there's community action and next thing habitat. There's a little bit of everything. So everyone can find their niche and every student can find what way they can help out with pollinators. So this is what I love about the pollinator garden buffet. And pretty much you score up, you tally up points in this, and it's a you know, when it comes to competition, that's where as a teacher, if you're with kindergartners in first or second grade, maybe you don't want it to be too competitive, right? But in high school, they're very competitive about everything, you know. So I try to, you know, so you gotta know your audience of how competitive you want it. So it does get into like you know, going just kind of going through these, but there's a lot of you'll get a lot of cards of different types of plants, right? But that all these games, you know, you can make it as competitive as you want it. You know, you know your classroom, you want to make it competitive. Some students naturally get competitive with these games, so that's just up to you and your classroom. But you pretty much tally up points and become a superhero or, you know, or a sidekick or a pollinator sidekick or a pollinator superhero. There we go. There they are. Pollinator superhero, pollinator champion, pollinator sidekick. You just kind of tally up points, and there's a card and information that like how to find these points, and it depends on the plant that you picked. You know, is it a very pollinator friendly plant? You'll get more points. If not, you will get less. Um, and so on. That's the Pollinator Garden Buffet. Pollinator diversity cards. This kind of goes a little bit more in detail, and this is another station, right? Detailed on specific bees. All right. So, and I just, you know, it's just this is I talk to students about how you have, you know, they're gonna have to write down like 4 or 5 of these on their sheet, but this kind of gets them prepared for projects later that's coming up, right? So data collecting and knowing, you know, if you're gonna specifically look at purple cone flowers in your school garden or in the park that you bring students, you know the purple cone flowers are ready ahead of time, but then collecting data on certain bees that land on those purple cone flowers, and it's really hard to kind of like very focus on like what kind of bee was that? Was that a honeybee? Was that a fly? Was that a wasp? That was definitely a bee, but what was it? So these cards kind of prep students for projects like that. And talks about how, you know, pollinators are more than just bees, right? It could be bats, it could be birds, beetles. breaks down the anatomy, the details, right? And I've had students that just, would focus on one of these types of bees and create a whole project on them, on some, and that was their niche for for the course, and they created a whole little presentation on it, and it was fabulous, and you give them a little bit more of a freedom what they want to pick and what kind of excites them. I think you could find in your state like how many species of bumblebees there are in your state, and you could create what activity I love to do is create a Google Slides and have everyone on those slides, and everyone's kind of creating a slide of a specific species or a specific insect that they like, and we're all creating content together, and we share that with the school, we share that with other classes. Fun facts: queen bumblebees have antifreeze in their blood to help them survive the winter. And so these little diversity cards kind of like matching games. So, I like to, during our PLCs in the school, we have to kind of measure ways of improvements of certain content. So what I like to do for my data collection as a teacher, which that is required, I kind of use this, and I kind of like, without even showing them the diversity card, sometimes I'll lay out these cards and see how well they do, and then we'll do the units and the stations, and then at the end I will do it again and see how the improvements for each student did when it comes to just matching these cards and really being good at identifying pollinators. So these are just fun ways and good ways to do a lot more with just when it comes to your responsibilities as a teacher and what kind of things that you can do to gather data and see improvements, right, for students. This was one of my favorite stations, Pollinator Plate. This is when it comes to like that food security issues. It's very relatable. I've had, you can go above and beyond with this station and actually bring some of these foods in, and if you, especially if you have like a food production class and being able to have access to a culinary room, you can like start bringing things in like that in person and doing these labs like the last workshop talked about. You could buy a lot of these labs on the website, on the National Ag in the Classroom website, and supplement a lot of these type of stations to another lab later on, like the strawberry lab and the DNA extraction. So I like the fact that we start out with this with almonds, and you can do this in multiple ways. I've done this station. I'll leave all the pollinator plates like in on students' desks and tables, and we'll go through this kind of together, and they'll read it out loud, and I'll have this on the big screen so that everyone can see it on the big screen. So you could do it this way, you could just do it individually, but each one of these we discuss each pollinator plate, and it's just fun to see what students think about like what's going to be on this plate. In this case, none. And I love talking about this one because almonds, in California, it's that's where all the almonds grow, and it's indeed must. Honeybees are a must. They have I would really call it a symbiotic relationship with almond producers and beekeepers, because beekeepers all across the country go to the almond orchards in California. I believe in February, I believe, or yeah, I think it's February time, where the flowers are producing that nectar. So they come in and they rent out their commercial bees to these almond orchards, and that's how they make their most of their income for the year. Beekeepers, and there's a lot of pros and cons to all that, bringing all the honeybees in one area in California, and but without bees, there's no almonds. And so if you like the almond milk, if you like to eat chocolate almonds, and you have to give some love to commercial honeybees, because without them, there won't be any almonds. There's a lot of good YouTube videos talking about this. It's quite the all the logistics that goes into this operation to pollinate almonds every year is insane. There's a lot of podcasts talking about the stories of trucking bees to California for this pollination, but it's there's a lot of good videos and YouTube documentaries on this solely, but because it's just that important. Pretty bizarre seeing truckloads of bees being moved from one state to the other to California. So, and there's a lot more pollinator plates, by the way. There's so many, there's a bunch of them that talks a little bit about the importance of pollination. There's coffee and ice cream, and I like the ice cream one because students are like, ice cream, pollination, how does that connect? And that's like kind of like the segue of how pollination connects to animal agriculture. The pollination that is happening towards the feed of animal agriculture, right? Affects the production of cheese, of milk, right? So that's how it connects to the animal agriculture, which later in my class, once we get to the animal agriculture units, I always kind of review and kind of go back to the foundation of pollination and the food and the feed that they eat. Monarch mishaps. This is the other one that takes a little longer than most. So this is a very this is kind of like an easy way to start learning about how to collect data. Very easy math. But it gives you all the instructions on here. You get 10 cards of each of the adult butterfly, the egg, and then the larva. And you kind of just spin through. You have a little spinner, and it kind of falls into these factors of a car. Like I like mentioning how I have a lot of family in Texas, and when I drive to Texas sometimes, I had this one time where a monarch hit right in the windshield, and I felt so bad. But that's the reality. They're migrating, and we have vehicles, people have vehicles, and that's just a factor that people don't think about when it comes to that decline of monarchs, is that human intervention. We have roads, we have vehicles and cars, and then that's just one factor that is a reality. What can we do to help out with these problems, right? And then there's pesticides, and then nature does its own thing, and ants eat the eggs, and so there's a lot of factors that are involved in the decline of monarchs. So you kind of spin through uh, through the game and kind of look at the ratio of survival rates, and it's usually kind of low numbers, but then we do a whole average as a class. Every student does the game. In my class, that's how we do it, and then we get a whole average, and then we look at and then we start going into documentaries about their migration, and everyone was kind of part of you know that ending number of the average of the decline of monarchs, and then from there you can go ahead and start looking at other, extend it if you want in your class. If you have an interest in your class about monarchs, there's a lot of good work, documentaries too, and other resources available when it comes to their reproduction, right? So yeah, that's the monarch mishaps, and just a lot of factors involved in their decline. There's a little data sheet that comes with it. And then I believe this might be the last, second to last station of how bee sees flowers. And this is just kind of, this is a kind of a hard one to kind of talk to and discuss with students about, like, how do you figure out like how bees sees the way they see, and doesn't everything look the way we look at the world? And it just we kind of have these discussions about how we have to be a little bit more um you know, humble in the way of just like, just because we see the world we see doesn't mean that all insects and other animals see the world the way they see the world, right? Like dogs can't are colorblind, so we have to just kind of understand a little bit about the importance of that, and just because you could go you could discuss a lot into this, but it's just talking about flowers too, discussing about the flowers that they go after. And it's kind of neat to see, like, wow, that's what they kind of see. That's wild. Actions to help pollinators. The last one that's coming up here is going to be a trivia. I like to end the station in my class with the whole trivia that's coming up here in a little bit. So we could end here right on time. So yeah, plant flowers is, these are just, big idea of like what all this, the whole toolkit's about. It's, plant flowers. Dr. Marla Spivak at her TED Talk, that's what her main message is to, if you want to help pollinators, we have to learn about flowers and we have to plant flowers on your doorstep. If it's just a little bit, you'll be surprised how many bees are attracted to that one little flower that you have at your doorstep. We need to kind of pay attention to the flowers. Pay attention to the flowers, but also think about being free of pesticides and insecticides and fungicides, and where you buy your flowers, should you seed them, and where do you go get them, is other things that you got to keep in mind. Providing homes. A lot of people think that all bees live in a hive, like honeybees, right? They live in, but a lot of bees live in ground nests and cavity nests, and so they live in little different areas, and sometimes we're stepping on them and we're not realizing it because we just haven't had this type of education and content in our schools, and we're mowing things over, and we're stepping on habitat all the time. We're just destroying habitat just in our backyard. Taking climate action. And there's a lot of awesome apps. iNaturalist, Bumblebee Watch, where again, the whole idea on this pollinator toolkit too is to get your students to become scientists. Right? Being a scientist doesn't mean you have to have some sort of PhD of something and have a whole fancy lab coat. Anybody can be a scientist, and you can go over in students, they take a lot of pride in that when you start telling them that they themselves are scientists when they're collecting this data, and you could use these apps to be part of part of these projects of helping pollinators. So I like ending it with a pollinator trivia, and I don't know, let's see if y'all want to play along here, and you could put it on the chat, or you could you know use your audio and shout out the answer if you know it. But if you know, that's cool. I'll just skip right to the answer if you want. But it's nice. I had students in my wood shop who's starting to create like a large one for like just like this. It looks just like it, but through wood. And when we have open houses or anything with like FFA events, we do this in an in-person setting, and we give little prizes and little gifts and stuff. So, but this is the online version that's available for y'all. And it kind of spins, and then we have students spin it. Bee biology, that's your first one. So, how many eyes do bees have? A2, B5, C200. Students
Got a
usually,
couple answers online in the Q&A. Guessing 5
yeah,
from Melissa.
that's the answer. It is 5. They have 2 compound eyes and 3 simple eyes. Bam. Pollinators. Many insects act as pollinators. Which of these are not pollinators? A, wasp, B, flies, C, beetles, D, dragonflies.
Ooh. We got some nuns as well as wasps and beetles.
I believe the answer is going to be dragonflies. They're insect eaters. They don't visit flowers for nectar or pollen. Helping pollinators. How can you provide more food for pollinators? This is an easy one. This is like that big message that I try to get students to do, because usually these type of units kind of lead into horticulture, right? And learning how to plant your own flowers. Not just flowers, but vegetables bring their flowers, right? So they had those sources as well, and cucumbers and all that stuff. Those are also flowers, but it also adds a product too. So that's why a lot of students would rather, flowers are beautiful, but you don't have to just do flowers. You could do vegetables and fruits as well. but it's plant flowers and plant variety that blooms all summer long. And we're pretty much bee biology. What color can we see that bees cannot? I'll kind of move quick here because I know we're kind of out of time here. But the answer is red. Kind of move through this fast, you know. So
Josh,
yeah.
I got a question online that says, is there a link for the game? All this stuff you're going to find on the B Lab at the B Lab .umn.edu, correct? There you go. Look here, he's
There it
posting this
is.
right now.
There it is. So that's the QR code, and you know, you can find all these resources. There's all the online resources, you know, but I just, you know, the virtual kit is pretty much free to use. We would just like y'all's feedback because there's only like the second version of this toolkit happening right now. So we always love the feedback, and I work with Elaine and Elise directly to kind of test these out in the classroom and go to other elementary schools and kind of make little little events. You know, we have a pollinator event coming up next week, and we're going to be using the toolkit there too. So you could just not only in the classroom, but you could use this in a lot of events and different ways of doing it. So feedback would be awesome and great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Josh. Really appreciate this. I have a couple screens here, and I was able to play around on the B Lab website while listening to you folks. It's all there. Everything is there. I'll let you finish up, Josh. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna mention that too. You know, just visit the website, and you know, our email. I could share with my emails too, like of if you want to collaborate a little bit more. I have a lot of resources in terms of commercial beekeeping, and so if you want to kind of like collaborate and work with that too. So there's just so much resources out there, and they're being developed as we speak. There's a lot of development in curriculum, commercial beekeeping, and native pollinators as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Josh. Really appreciate this. Didn't know when you put up the picture of your bearded bee, your bee beard, you'd be the only teacher with a chalkboard still. So, but totally appreciate your passion and enthusiasm for all things pollinators, folks. That is Josh from Minnesota with the Pollinator Toolkit. All of that stuff you can find at the blab.umn. .edu. So go to the B Lab, check it out. With that, thank you very much again, Josh. Really appreciate it, folks. We appreciate the support that we've received from the CHS Foundation as well as BASF sponsoring our virtual National Ag in the Classroom conference. We'll be back at the bottom of the hour. Our next up is we're gonna pull some specialty fruits, and we're gonna pull some pollinators and pull some other stuff together with Chris Wyatt from Awesome Agriculture, the Illinois Ag in the Classroom program. He's up next at the bottom of the hour. We'll start again right at 11:30 Central. We'll see you soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Josh. Really appreciate it.